that recently has been very near and dear to me, and that is I have a vitamin B12 deficiency. And I only found it recently. I found it right before I moved to Asia. As most of you hopefully know, I'm living in Bali right now and loving it. But right before I moved, I went to see a doctor in Canada because I literally packed up all my stuff, got rid of everything I owned, got rid of my home, everything. And one of the last things I wanted to do was just make sure to see a Western doctor, get all my blood work done, make sure that I'm in perfect health. And I went right before I left, and luckily I had asked for a B12 test just to make sure. And I realized I'd never actually been tested for B12. Every year I get tested for like everything. I mean, from my thyroid to my cholesterol levels to all sorts of stuff, right? My hormones, I get tested every year. But for some reason, I never get myself tested for B12.
So that's the mistake people do, is they never have had a B12 test in their life, and they get their first one, and if it's deficient, they immediately blame what they've been doing. Just recently, oh, my vegan diet, I'm B12 deficient, can't do it, no, it doesn't work, not natural. It's the first time they've ever tested for B12. That's like someone coming over to my house, leaving their wallet behind, and they ring me up and say, Harley, I left my wallet behind, and I hand it back to them next day, and they check it, and there's no money in there, or there's not much in there, and they're like, you stole my money. And I'm like, how much money was in your wallet? I've never actually opened this wallet before. I've never opened this wallet in my life. I don't know how much was in there, but there should have been heaps in there. But there's not hardly anything in there. It's like, if we don't know how much was there before, how can we say what was the cause? If we don't know what was in there before, then how can we say, you know what I mean? So getting your first ever blood test, first ever B12 test, and making an assumption that's because you're a vegan, that's the 100% reason why, that is really, really ignorant to make that claim. Let's look at other lifestyle factors that could have possibly caused Natasha's B12 deficiency. Just maybe, just maybe.
Focus on the positive, and I have to just be very clear with myself about myself and my own issue with the deficiency is that I do have a history of being a smoker. I smoked for 20 years, heavy smoker, okay? I also have a history of having heavy antibiotic use. I had open heart surgery as a child. You can just imagine the amount of medications and antibiotics that my body was pumped with, okay? I've also, in my late teens, my early 20s, I was on the birth control pill for years, okay? And so all these things combined would mean I'm a likely candidate to have a B12 deficiency, which I have, okay? So I just want to try and be as clear as possible about this so that no one is having any misunderstandings. So today I want to actually address some of the questions and comments that I got from yesterday's video on my B12 deficiency. A lot of people wrote in sort of asking me, you know, if I have B12 deficiency and so many raw foodists and vegans and vegetarians have B12 deficiency, then obviously, you know, vegetarian or vegan diet is not an appropriate diet. And they wanted to get sort of my view on this and what I think. And I think that what we first need to address, and I think that I really just want to be extremely clear about, is that the B12 deficiency, it's not so much about the diet as it is your own body and how it's functioning. And I think I want to really just first of all stress that not only raw foodists or vegans or vegetarians get a B12 deficiency, but many other people do, okay? Many other people that are on a meat or a dairy product eating diet get a B12 deficiency, and especially the elderly. Okay, and people that have had any kind of digestive issue. okay, whether it's Crohn's disease, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, and especially if they've had celiac or a wheat gluten allergy, okay? But as many people know, that there's a lot of issues people have in their small intestine, especially people that have issues like celiac disease or a wheat intolerance, okay? Because with the wheat gluten, that protein, it actually destroys the microvilli in the small intestine, making it impossible or very difficult for the body to absorb most nutrition, okay, including B12, okay? So that's more of an issue, is that if someone has a history of having issues that they're not absorbing nutrition, whether it's from the wheat allergy, or it might be from smoking cigarettes, or it might be from taking antibiotics, or it might be from drinking chlorinated water all the time. Who knows? There's many reasons why people have malabsorption issues. It can also be from aging. You know, so many of the elderly who have had, you know, their whole entire lives are eating meat and seafood and dairy products, and they still run into B12 deficiency as they get older because they've run out of their reserves and they're having a hard time absorbing it from their food. And a lot of the elderly have to get monthly shots of B12, okay? So we have to look at it that way. That is, you know, a lot of times people are always wanting to blame it on something. You know, and it's like, blame it on being vegetarian or blame it on a vegan diet. And it's like, you know, yes, it doesn't help to be on a vegetarian or vegan diet, but even if someone had a malabsorption issue, if they even went on to eating meat and dairy products, it still might not be able to absorb the B12, okay? So it's like, my whole view is that instead of trying to always find something to blame everything on, why not just try and find solutions? Use your energy that way, instead of always being like, it's the fault of this and it's that. You know, I like, for myself and people that I counsel, to get their nutrition from the food, because that usually is the case where it's most absorbable. There are cases where when people have celiac or other digestive issues, that if they're not on a program where they're eating the foods that are supporting their digestive health, they will not be absorbing it from the B12. And yes, that is true. But the thing is that I'd rather try with the food before I try with the supplements.
Hang on, try the food. You've already started doing B12 injections, Natasha. So you're saying I'd rather try the food before I try the supplements. You've been on B12 supplements most of your adult life, you've said in previous videos, and you're already doing B12 injections, and now you're saying, I want to try the food before I try the supplements. It's like, what?
And what I've come to decide for myself is to start eating animal products, and to start eating fish, and to start eating seafood, and to start eating meat and eggs. And I don't like to eat dairy products or anything like that, so that's not my thing. But I've decided to, and I have already started to eat animal foods.
You know, so many of the elderly who have had, you know, their whole entire lives are eating meat and seafood and dairy products, and they still run into B12 deficiency as they get older because they've run out of their reserves and they're having a hard time absorbing it from their food.
You know, I'm doing something completely different than even what my morals tell me to be doing. You know, it's not only have I been vegetarian for all these years, but I've been a practicing Buddhist for 15 years, and I don't believe in the killing of animals. And you know, I'm not a hardcore, you know, animal rights activist or anything like that, but, you know, I don't like to hurt anything. I've decided to, and I have already started to eat animal foods. That I had a really good conversation with a yoga instructor while I was in Ubud, and she made a really, really great point to me, and she had said, do you want to be on these injections for the rest of your life? Kind of like a diabetic is on insulin. You know, and someone that's got like type 2 diabetes, they're given a choice. They can either, you know, take the insulin, or they can change their diet and slowly decrease the insulin, where eventually they can get off of it completely. And it's the same thing with me. Do I want to take the injections, or do I want to get it from the food and change my diet and my lifestyle? You know, and it became very obvious to me that, you know, if I was a diabetic and I had the choice to change my diet or to stay on injections, change the diet instantly. So why am I holding back with changing my...
Natasha's saying, oh, but you have to be on B12 injections the rest of your life. That's a fact. If you're born with a genetic issue of B12 absorption, it doesn't matter what you're eating, you're not going to get enough. If you're born with pancreatic failure and you're a type 1 diabetic, you're on insulin the rest of your life. You're not going to get off that. Type 2, yes, you will. But using a diabetic type 2 person as a, you know, someone with B12 issues like pernicious anemia or something like that, that's not a very accurate analogy at all. Because if that person doesn't go on B12 injections and they have an absorption issue, they're not going to get enough B12. The type 2 diabetic, that's easy to solve, you know what I mean? So using those analogies, Natasha's sort of sabotaged her success there by having a limiting belief, thinking, oh, I just need to eat meat. So she's gone back to, you know, preschool nutrition days when she was like quite advanced in college, you know. So get back from preschool to college and keep on charging. I've given 5 of my meat-eating friends B12 injections in the last fortnight, 5 of them, and I've just showed them how they can self-administer and get on the program because they're still B12 deficient after eating animal products for ages. One of my friends is raw foodist for 10 years, eating raw organic animal products for over 10 years now. Blood tests come back last fortnight, B12 deficient for him. He wants to take action on that now. So instead of just continuing on another 10 years of having low B12 levels from eating animal products, he's on the injections now, no problem. So he's done it. You know, I've seen him eat a chicken he put on the roof, and he let maggots get into it, like true story. A sun-dried chicken on the roof with maggots crawling through it, ate the lot. Oysters, high meat, like you put meat in the jar, let it all furry and rancid, eat that. I've seen him do that. Eggs, oysters, fish, all sorts of creepy crawlers. He's eaten those the last decade, 100% raw foodist. Still got a B12 deficiency issue going on there. How do we explain that? So, you know, and I've got friends, meat-eater friends again, and raw flesh-eating friends who eat their own feces, eat their feces of kangaroos, still got B12 deficiencies, you know. So people get in this mindset of purity. I don't want to do supplements, and yeah, they're breathing in pollution every day, and they're, you know, they're on electronic products and things like that. We don't live in a natural world anymore. The air's sterile, the soil's sterile, the water's sterile, the food's sterile. So when you come up with a B12 issue, you know what I mean? Use the most effective means of reversing that. And if it was eating animal products, then we wouldn't see any single B12 deficiency in people who eat animal products. Eating animal products would be 100% sure safe, wouldn't it? But it's not. You know what I mean? B12 injections, boom, it's done. You know what I mean? That's the most effective way to do them. Sublinguals, some people say. So you do your own homework, sublinguals, B12 injections. You know what I mean? Do some testing. Or just do courses of injections, go from there. There's always more to the story. You know, people are quick to jump, and people jumped on the bandwagon for the video. So look, Harley, another vegan bites the dust. And it's like, well, again, let's look at it. Natasha's got a history of smoking, celiacs, antibiotic use, the pill, heart surgery. All these things can affect your B12 absorption, deactivate your B12 levels. So we've got that for starters. She's already on B12 supplements, she says, little pills, popping pills. Natasha says her body does not absorb B12 properly. You know what I mean? And she's on injections now. B12 levels are going to be back up, obviously. So people say, oh, well, it's because she's not eating animal products. And it's like, well, haven't you just heard what she's been explaining? So what happens is people just cherry pick the information and run with it. You know what I mean? Versus looking at the real data, the Tufts University studies, the Framingham study, the real world situations. Ask your doctors, ask your local nurses, how many B12 injections did you give per week? They give literally hundreds each surgery. You know, each pathology lab tests for B12 all the time. Must be a lot of vegans out there. You know what I mean? 99% of people don't know what vegan means. So meat eaters have just as much chance of B12 issues as anybody. You know what I mean? As anybody. So do more homework and read more books. The best book to read is Could It Be B12 by Sally Patchlock. So basically all Natasha has to do is watch her first few videos and she'll have her answers. Natasha here is making the critical mistake. She's believing some sincere but sincerely wrong yoga instructor who's saying, well, you should eat animal products because animal products have got B12 in them. And Natasha's forgetting all her health fundamentals, all her principles, all her morals because of one statement from a yoga instructor in Bali. But you should eat animal products for B12, don't you? It's like saying, if you go vegan, where do you get your protein from? You know, people's ignorance is like so deep. Natasha's a very, very educated, smart person. I understand why she's making this mistake, critical mistake. I've seen it happen a lot in my friends in the last 10 years. They've been tested like Natasha, first time ever tested in their life, as she said before. They get tested, they get low. They've got a past health history of smoking, of antibiotic use, of celiacs, of being on the pill and or having surgery like nitrous oxide, deactivates your B12 stores. So they get the test first time ever, it comes up low, and they're vegan or vegetarian or whatever, and they assume it's from not eating animal products. You know what I mean? That's a critical mistake. And then they start eating animal products. And the B12 levels just stay the same. They don't go up. Or in Natasha's case, what she's done is she started doing injections. B12 levels are up. Now she's eating animal products and she feels better. But in actual fact, it's the B12 injections, because you will not reverse a B12 deficiency by consuming animal products. If you did, then we would not see B12 deficiency in people who eat animal products. But as we see in the Tufts University study, the Framingham study, people, up to 40% of the flesh-eating participants have borderline B12 issues. And we've got to remember, in the US, the cutoff is 150 for your serum B12 as a minimum, 150. In Japan, it's up 550, 500. So you can test, say, 250 in US and go, yep, you're okay. In Japan, you test 250, they're like, boom, on the injection straight away, thanks for coming. So that's a critical mistake Natasha's made. First ever B12 test, assumes it's because it's a vegan. And she forgets about her past health history as a smoker, celiacs, the antibiotic use, the pill, things like that, drinking chlorinated water, having high stress life, life changes, things like that, which we all have. So that's a critical mistake Natasha's made. And now she's adding animal products in while she's doing B12 injections, and she's crediting the animal products. It's like, so I'm not sure what's happened there. Like, Natasha's was on the track doing really good, and then just boom, just dropped the ball. And that's another example of hanging around people who support your lifestyle versus try and drag you down. You know what I mean? Try and drag you down to their flesh-eating level, or their apathy, or their ignorance, or their just status quo, worship the god of public opinion mindset. Hang out with leaders, hang out with winners, hang out with champions. Become what you want to attract. The moral of the story is advice is everywhere. It's the cheapest commodity on earth. Be careful who you take advice from. Follow your heart, follow your intuition, follow your morals, follow the fun, follow the bliss. Use some science. Above all, follow your heart. Lastly, just wanted to add the dangers of eating animal products. We've got heart disease, cancer, obesity, osteoporosis, stroke, all these things. One thing we forget about is the parasitic infestations that can occur, especially from fish and various animals, especially raw ones, because when you're not cooking them, the bacteria, the little worm larvae, the worm eggs are still alive. Even when you cook them, some of these can be resistant to heat. So you're getting these worm eggs, larvae from your animal products, and they sit in your gut and can grow up to 30 feet long. Check it out. Don't just believe what I'm saying. Look up on the internet. Worm infestations from eating fish or pork or cow flesh or chickens. Look up these pictures on YouTube, the videos and stuff like that. It's pretty full on. And what can happen is these worms grow and they feed off your B12 levels in your body. So you're eating raw fish or sashimi or salmon or tuna or whatever, or pork or cow flesh, and you're thinking it's my B12, man. So you're eating it, and the worms grow in your body, and then they're chewing up all your B12 levels. Your B12 levels are dropping. You don't even know because you're not getting tested. You think, oh, everything's great. And then people are getting rampant deficiencies by eating these animal products. It's sort of like trying to make your hand stronger by punching bricks. It doesn't work that way. So, and then what they're happening is they're getting these worms removed in surgery, and the worms are a red colour, pink colour, and they're not normally. Why are they pink and red? Because they're actually chewing up all the B12 levels in the human body. They're feeding off that. And B12 is red naturally. It's naturally occurringly red. So these worms, they get pulled out of the body and they're sort of a red, pinky, transparent colour from chewing up all the B12. So look up B12 deficiencies from fish worms, some tapeworms, some pinworms, some hookworms. Look it up. Interesting fact to keep in mind. You know, so next time someone says, "Oh, just eat raw animal products, B12," yeah, you know, they're just parroting, regurgitating meat and dairy industry propaganda dogma, and they have really no idea on the subject. They haven't done their homework. They're just following what everyone else is doing, and they'll get what everyone else is getting, which is overweight, fat, dumbed down, sick, depressed, apathetic, out of shape, destroying the planet.